For thousands of years, humans have looked at the sky with wonder. Every night when the stars shine above the dark world, people feel a deep question inside their hearts. What is out there? How far can a human go? How high can a person rise before the sky turns black? These questions are not new. They were asked by ancient civilizations, by travelers, by philosophers, and by dreamers. But in the modern world, one dream became stronger than the rest, the dream of leaving Earth behind and experiencing the freedom of near space. This dream did not belong to one person. It belonged to all of humanity. But one day, a man stood up and decided that he would not only look at the sky, he would rise into it. He would not only dream of touching space, he would jump from it. His mission would become one of the greatest and most dangerous human attempts ever made. And this is where his story begins. The story starts long before the jump itself. It begins with a simple desire, the desire to go higher than anyone before him. The idea sounds impossible at first. After all, humans are not made for heights beyond the clouds. When a person climbs a mountain, the air becomes thinner. Breathing becomes harder. When a jet flies high, the pressure drops and life outside the plane becomes deadly. But humans have always been curious. Where others see a limit, dreamers see a new challenge. This is why high-altitude exploration has always been fascinating. Balloons were the first machines that allowed humans to rise into the sky. In the late 1700s, hot air balloons carried the first brave adventurers into the air. People gasped as they watched humans float above the ground for the very first time. Newspapers called it the beginning of a new age. Later, gas balloons and scientific balloons climbed even higher, high enough to touch the edges of the atmosphere. Scientists discovered new winds, new temperatures, new dangers, and new possibilities. Each mission took humans a little closer to space. As technology improved, airplanes joined the journey. Early pilots flew at higher altitudes, pushing their small machines beyond their limits. Then jet engines changed everything. Jets flew faster, climbed higher, and broke speed records. But even jets had their limits. They could not reach near space. That was a zone only balloons and rockets could reach. By the 1950s and 1960s, military pilots and space agencies started becoming interested in the stratosphere, a layer of the atmosphere so high and thin that it almost feels like space. Pilots flying at these heights needed special suits. These early suits looked bulky and strained, but they were designed to protect life in a place humans were never meant to survive. Many people do not know this, but the first attempts to jump from near space began more than 60 years ago. Back then, scientists were trying to learn what happens to the human body if a pilot ejects from a high-altitude aircraft. Could a person survive the fall? Would the body spin uncontrollably? Could a parachute even open in such thin air? The first test jumps were dangerous, and some ended in tragedy. But each test brought new knowledge and saved countless pilots' lives. Fast forward to the modern era and the dream is still alive. But now, it is not just about saving pilots. It is about pushing human limits. It is about exploring human courage. It is about showing that the human spirit can rise above fear, above danger, and even above the Earth itself. This is the world the jumper grew up in. A world full of stories about brave explorers, astronauts, and pilots who risked everything to reach new heights. As a child, he saw pictures of astronauts floating in space, looking down at Earth. He saw videos of high-altitude balloon flights and felt a strange pull inside his heart. He knew he wanted to go higher than planes, higher than mountains, higher than anything normal humans ever experienced. He wanted to stand where the sky turns dark, where the Earth curves below him like a giant blue planet, where silence is so deep it feels unreal. He wanted to see the world the way only astronauts see it, and he wanted to take one giant leap from the edge of space. This dream was not just about thrill or adventure. It was about science. It was about human progress. The idea of jumping from near space offered something valuable: new data for future astronauts, new ways to design safer suits, and new tests for high-altitude survival. If a human could survive such a jump, space agencies could use the knowledge to protect astronauts in emergencies. But dreaming is one thing. Making the dream real is something else. The jumper knew this would not be easy. He knew that this mission would be extremely dangerous. He also knew that many experts believed it was impossible. Still, the idea stayed in his mind. It followed him everywhere. It kept him awake at night. He imagined standing above Earth, feeling the silence of near space around him. He imagined looking down at the world and taking that step forward. Finally, he made a decision. He would do it. He would attempt the highest jump in human history. To achieve this, he needed help. He could not do this alone. He reached out to engineers, scientists, doctors, and balloon experts. He explained his vision. Some people laughed. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But a few understood the importance of his idea. They saw that this mission could change the future of space exploration. So the team began to form, slowly, carefully, step by step. They studied old high-altitude jumps from the 1960s. They read scientific papers. They talked to experts in space medicine. They designed prototypes of high-pressure suits. Each test brought new questions. Each question created new solutions. The dream was becoming real, but danger was everywhere. Even in the early stages, the team understood the risks. If the pressure suit failed at high altitude, the jumper's blood could boil instantly. If the balloon burst, the mission could collapse before reaching the edge of space. If the jumper began spinning too fast after jumping, he could lose consciousness and never recover. These were not small dangers, they were life-threatening. But every time the team faced a new problem, they solved it together. They redesigned the helmet. They added stronger gloves. They improved oxygen systems. They studied the physics of falling from extreme heights. They built computers to track spin rate, speed, temperature, and pressure. Slowly, the mission started taking shape. A high-altitude balloon was constructed, gentle, fragile, and massive. Filled with helium, it would lift the jumper in a capsule from the ground to the edge of space. The journey would take hours. The balloon would expand as it rose, growing larger and larger as the air pressure around it decreased. The capsule would climb through clouds, through calm winds, through the jet stream, and into the silent region of the stratosphere. The jumper trained for years. He practiced wearing the heavy suit, learned how to breathe at high altitude. He learned how to control his body in freefall. His mind became sharper, calmer, more focused. He needed this calmness because fear could easily destroy the mission. Panic at high altitude is deadly. The jumper had to trust himself completely. Yet deep inside, he always felt a mix of fear and excitement. It was normal. Every explorer in history felt the same. The fear reminded him that he was still human. The excitement reminded him why the mission mattered. Meanwhile, the team prepared for the final day. Scientists tested weather conditions. Engineers checked each wire in the capsule. Medical experts monitored the jumper's health. The world outside knew nothing about what was coming. But inside the small training facility, a team of dreamers was preparing to make history. This part of the story shows something important. The jump was not just a sudden decision. It was the result of years of passion, research, teamwork, and courage. It was a moment shaped by science and guided by human spirit. The edge of space was not just a location. It was a goal, a symbol of pushing beyond limits. Finally, the day grew closer. The jumper stood in the desert at sunrise. The sky above him slowly changed from orange to blue. The giant balloon lay across the ground like a sleeping creature waiting to rise. Engineers moved around it carefully, checking every part. The air felt still, almost silent. The jumper looked up at the sky. He knew that soon he would not just look at it, he would rise into it. He would leave the world behind and go higher than any human in freefall history. He would stand in a place where Earth looks like a planet floating in black space. And when the moment arrived, he would jump. This was the dream. This was the mission. This was the beginning of one of the greatest human attempts ever made. In the days after the mission planning began, one thing became clear to everyone involved. This was not just an adventure. This was not a stunt for fame or excitement. This was science, deep, complicated, dangerous science. And if the team wanted the jumper to survive, they needed to understand the rules of nature that controlled the edge of space. To most people, the sky seems simple: blue during the day, black at night. Clouds float, birds fly, planes pass by. But above all of that is a world almost no one will ever see. A world where air disappears, where temperatures drop lower than Antarctica, where pressure becomes so weak that human life cannot survive unprotected. This was the world the jumper planned to fall through. Scientists call this place the stratosphere, a layer of the atmosphere far above normal flight levels. At about 39 kilometers, 24 miles above Earth, the air is so thin that even a small mistake can cause disaster. The team needed to understand every danger if they wanted the mission to succeed. The first problem was pressure. Humans are built for life at sea level. Here on the ground, the air around us pushes gently on our skin, but at near-space altitude, the pressure is almost gone. Without protection, a person would not survive even a few seconds. At that height, body fluids can begin to boil, not because they are hot, but because there is almost no pressure holding them down. The team explained this to the jumper many times. They showed him diagrams, graphs, and videos. They told him what would happen if his suit failed. He listened calmly, but deep inside, he felt the weight of responsibility. He knew that the suit was not just clothing, it was his lifeline. It was the only thing protecting him from the silent, deadly world above. Second problem was temperature. At the edge of space, the temperature can drop below 60 degrees C. That kind of cold can freeze skin, metal, wires, and oxygen tubes. The suit needed advanced insulation, heating systems, and air circulation. Engineers worked day and night testing materials. Some cracked under pressure, others became stiff and useless. Finally, after hundreds of tests, they created a suit strong enough to face near-space cold. It was bulky, heavy, and difficult to move in, but it could keep the jumper alive. The third problem was oxygen. The higher a person climbs, the less oxygen exists in the air. At a height of 39 km, there is almost no oxygen at all. Without a constant supply, the jumper would lose consciousness in seconds. The team built a special oxygen system for the suit. It had backup tanks, emergency valves, and pressure regulators. The jumper spent many hours learning to breathe in the suit. The air tasted dry and metallic. The sound of his own breath echoed inside the helmet, slow, steady, controlled. He practiced breathing even during stress because panic would make him use oxygen faster. The fourth problem was perhaps the most dangerous: spinning. When a person drops from extreme heights, the air resistance is so weak that the body can start rotating out of control. A slow spin is harmless, but a fast spin, that is deadly. Scientists warned him, if you start spinning too fast, your brain will shut down. You will lose consciousness. Your body may never recover. This was not an exaggeration. In the 1960s, during earlier high-altitude tests, one jumper lost control and spun at such a high speed that his blood began to move away from his head. He survived only because his emergency parachute opened automatically. The team knew they had to prevent this. They studied the physics of falling. They used computer simulations. They watched old videos of previous test jumps. They even created a special training room where the jumper practiced spreading his arms and legs the right way to stabilize his body. Over and over again, he practiced the exact moment he would begin the fall. He learned how to hold his body still, how to react to sudden movement, how to control his breathing even when fear hits. The fifth problem was speed. When he jumped, gravity would pull him down. At first, the thin air would allow him to accelerate quickly. His speed would rise faster and faster until he would eventually break the sound barrier with his body alone. This had never been done before. No human in freefall had ever traveled faster than the speed of sound. Planes do it. Bullets do it, rockets do it, but a human body, never. The idea frightened some scientists. They feared the shockwave might harm him. They feared the suit might tear. They feared the sudden pressure change might injure his lungs, ears, or eyes. Yet the jumper accepted this danger. He understood the risk. He accepted the unknown. That acceptance is what separated him from ordinary people, his willingness to face something no human had faced before. The final problem was communication. During the ascent in the balloon, the jumper needed to stay connected with mission control at all times. Engineers built a radio system into his helmet, but radio waves behave strangely at high altitudes. Sometimes they bend, sometimes they weaken, sometimes they disappear. The team set up multiple backups: ground antennas, satellite relays, emergency frequencies. They tested every system again and again. They wanted to hear his voice clearly, even when he was standing on the edge of space. With all these dangers, the mission still moved forward. The team understood that fear was normal. In fact, fear was useful. It kept them alert. It kept them careful. But they also felt something stronger than fear: purpose. Every discovery made during this mission would help future astronauts. It would help engineers build better suits for space travel. It would help pilots survive extreme emergencies. And it would bring humanity closer to understanding the upper atmosphere. The jumper trained endlessly. He walked in the suit until his legs ached. He practiced falling techniques again and again. He learned how to stay calm even when things went wrong. His heart became strong. His mind became sharp. The team around him felt inspired. They watched him closely as he trained. They saw how he pushed himself. They saw how he refused to give up. They knew that his courage was real, not loud, not dramatic, but quiet and steady, like the beating of a drum in the dark. The closer the mission came, the more intense the atmosphere became. Weather reports were checked hourly. Engineers inspected equipment every morning and night. Doctors observed the jumper's health, checking his blood pressure, heart rate, and oxygen levels. In the middle of this rush, a special moment happened. One night, after hours of preparation, the jumper walked outside and looked up at the night sky. The stars were bright. The air was cool. The world was silent. In that moment, he felt something strange, something powerful. He realized he was about to trust his life to a balloon made of thin material, a suit filled with wires and air tubes and the invisible laws of physics that controlled the sky above. He felt small, but he also felt ready. He placed his hand on the capsule gently, like someone touching an old friend. The capsule would carry him up. The balloon would lift him. The suit would protect him. Every piece of equipment around him had a story. Every bolt, every cable, every strap had been tested with care. The team watched him from a distance, understanding the meaning of that moment. This was more than science now. This was belief. belief in the mission, belief in human courage, belief in the unknown. The next morning, the final weather meeting took place. Scientists studied wind patterns, temperature layers, and balloon behavior. Everyone waited silently for the answer. Finally, the lead scientist spoke. "The conditions are perfect. We go tomorrow." A wave of energy filled the room. Tomorrow. After years of training and preparation, tomorrow would be the day. The jumper felt his heart beat faster. He nodded slowly. The team clapped softly. Everyone smiled, yet behind these smiles was fear, deep, serious fear. Not fear of failure, but fear of what could happen if something went wrong. As night fell again, the jumper sat alone in the training room, staring at his helmet. Inside the helmet, he could see his faint reflection. He whispered quietly, "Tomorrow I fly." But deep inside, he knew the truth. Tomorrow he risks everything. And as the sun began to rise on the final morning, the team gathered in the desert. The balloon lay stretched across the ground. The capsule stood ready, and the world held its breath. Because in just a few hours, he would begin the climb to the edge of space. A climb from which he might never return. The desert was still dark when the team arrived. Shadows stretched across the open land, and the cold morning air felt sharp against their skin. It was the final preparation day, the day before history would be made or broken. Everything they had planned for years was now coming together. Every tool, every instrument, every heartbeat in the room carried weight. The jumper walked slowly toward the capsule. Even from a distance, the capsule looked like a strange mix of science and courage. Part machine, part lifeboat. It was round, silver, and small, just big enough for one person. Its surface was covered with cables, antennas, and tiny screws that were carefully tested again and again. This tiny capsule would carry him toward the heavens. The team moved around him with calm precision. Engineers checked the pressure systems. Technicians inspected the oxygen lines. The medical team monitored his vitals on screens. Nobody spoke loudly. Nobody rushed. Everything was controlled, focused, disciplined. The jumper watched them work. He felt grateful for every person there. They were not just scientists, they were guardians of his life. Without them, the jump would be impossible. He felt the weight of their trust, and he knew he must honor it. As the sun slowly rose, the desert began to glow golden. Light revealed the giant balloon, soft, transparent, and majestic. Spread across the ground like a sleeping giant, it looked almost unreal. When filled with helium, it would grow larger than a skyscraper. It was fragile yet powerful, able to lift a human toward the edge of space. The jumper approached it respectfully, as if greeting a sacred creature. Inside the control tent, mission leaders reviewed every detail one last time. Weather patterns, wind speed, balloon expansion, emergency procedures. Each person carried years of experience, yet everyone understood this mission was unlike anything done before. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. The jumper began his final suit training inside a special room. The suit lay open on a metal chair waiting for him. Thick white material, black gloves, advanced wiring. It looked bulky, but inside it carried a world of protection: oxygen tanks, pressure layers, heaters, cooling systems, communication lines. It was more than clothing. It was a shield, a home, a survival chamber. He stepped inside with the help of technicians. They sealed the layers, tightened the straps, and checked every connection. The sound inside the helmet was muted. Only his breath echoed softly, a steady rhythm that reminded him he was alive. The team watched him through thick observation windows. They saw how calm he appeared, but they also saw the seriousness in his eyes. He knew exactly what he was about to face. Hours later, the jumper entered the simulation room. The walls were covered with screens showing the climb to near space. Engineers operated machines that recreated pressure levels, oxygen levels, and extreme temperatures. Fans simulated thin air and turbulence. It was not the same as the real environment, but it was close enough to test his reactions. He practiced leaving the capsule, slowly stepping onto the platform, imagining the blackness above and the earth below. He held onto the rail, controlled his breathing, and pictured the moment he would jump. Even in training, his heart beat faster. After each simulation, the team examined his reactions. They asked questions. How did the suit feel? Were you stable? Any trouble with oxygen or pressure? He answered calmly each time. Everything is good, I'm ready. But inside, he felt something unusual, something he did not tell anyone, the strange feeling of standing between life and death. The thin line between the impossible and the extraordinary. It made him more focused than ever. That night, the jumper visited the facility's quiet room. It was small, with one table and a window showing the desert. He sat alone, thinking about the mission. He thought about the long climb to near space. He thought about the silence he would feel up there. He thought about the unknown. A quiet knock came on the door. It was the lead engineer, a man who rarely showed emotion. He sat across from the jumper for a moment and then spoke softly. "You know," he said, "you're about to teach us something no machine can teach. What happens to a real human body in near space? We trust our numbers, our tests, our designs, but tomorrow we will trust you, and I hope the world understands how much courage this truly takes." The jumper nodded quietly. "Thank you for building something strong enough to bring me back." The engineer smiled softly. "We built the machine, but you carry the mission." The conversation ended there, but the words stayed with him all night. The next morning, the entire team gathered for the final full rehearsal. The balloon was partially inflated for safety. The capsule was lifted slightly off the ground. The jumper practiced entering the capsule for the last time. He moved slowly, carefully. He stepped inside the narrow space. The interior was small and filled with buttons, screens, and switches. A small window provided the only view of the outside world. He strapped himself into the seat. The final moments of the ascent flashed in his mind. Technicians called out each item from a long checklist: oxygen supply stable, pressure level stable, communication testing, suit connection confirmed, telemetry active. Everything worked perfectly. When he stepped out of the capsule again, one of the younger engineers, nervous but proud, handed him a tablet. "This shows every emergency scenario, just in case." The jumper accepted it politely, but he didn't look at it. He already knew what could go wrong. He had accepted those risks long ago. Later that afternoon, the medical team tested him one more time. Blood pressure, heart rate, reflexes, stress levels. He passed every test. But what impressed the doctors most wasn't his physical strength, it was his mental calmness. He was steady, focused, and quiet. One doctor whispered to another, "He has the mind of an astronaut." As evening approached, the desert sky changed colors again, from bright gold to deep orange, then into a dark, quiet blue. The balloon remained still on the ground, waiting for the next day. The capsule gently reflected the fading sunlight. The entire scene looked almost surreal, as if time itself was slowing down. The jumper stood alone near the capsule, feeling the cold wind brush against the suit. He closed his eyes and imagined the climb. He imagined floating above the world. He imagined the silence, deep, endless silence. He tried to imagine fear, but the feeling didn't come. Instead, he felt something else, a strange pull, as if the sky itself was calling him. Soon, Mission Control called him inside for the final briefing. The room was filled with screens, diagrams, weather maps, and the hum of electronics. Everyone took their seats. The mission leader spoke firmly. "Tomorrow is launch day. Weather conditions continue to remain perfect. But we must remember, this is not a routine operation. This is the highest human balloon flight ever attempted. Once the balloon leaves the ground, there is no turning back." The jumper listened carefully. The leader continued. "You will rise to an altitude where rescue is impossible. You will stand alone in a place no human was meant to stand, but everything is prepared, everything is ready." Then he lowered his voice. "And now we trust you." The briefing ended, but instead of applause, the room remained silent. Everyone understood the seriousness of the moment. Night fell. Stars appeared across the sky like scattered diamonds. The desert became cold again. The team went to rest, but nobody slept properly. Every mind was filled with fear, excitement, curiosity, and hope. The jumper entered a small sleeping cabin. He removed his suit, placed it neatly in a corner, and looked at it one last time before lying down. He whispered softly, "Tomorrow everything begins." But sleep did not come easily. Images of the mission flooded his mind, ascending through thin air, reaching the blackness of near space, standing on the platform, and finally, stepping into nothingness. His heartbeat echoed inside his ears. Hours later, just before dawn, the sound of a radio alarm shook the entire camp. A voice crackled urgently. "Attention, we have a problem. The balloon, something is wrong." The jumper jumped out of bed. The team ran outside, and in the dim morning light they saw something that made their hearts freeze. The massive balloon was moving, but nobody had touched it. Something unexpected had happened, something that could destroy the entire mission. The desert air was cool and sharp when the team rushed outside. The sky was still dark, only a faint blue on the horizon, but something unusual was happening. The giant balloon, empty just minutes before, was shifting gently as if touched by an invisible hand. It lifted slightly, then settled again. For a moment, nobody moved. The entire team stared at the balloon with tight breaths. "Is it wind?" one engineer whispered. The weather officer shook her head. "No wind, not at this hour." The balloon moved again, only a little, but enough to make everyone anxious. Then the mission leader stepped forward. "It's temperature," he said calmly. "The air is warming, the balloon membrane is reacting. This is normal, but we must start the inflation now. If we wait, the rising temperature could damage the material." At once, the tension transformed into action. Engineers ran to their stations. Technicians prepared the helium valves. Mission Control powered up computers. The ground crew spread the balloon fully across the desert floor, careful not to tear its thin surface. The jumper, now fully awake, stood silently watching the scene. His heart was steady, but his mind was sharp. He knew this was the real beginning. Once the helium entered the balloon, there would be no turning back. He adjusted his gloves and felt the weight of the moment. The mission leader approached him. "It's time, suit up." Inside the preparation tent, technicians helped him into the suit. Layer by layer, they locked him into the final version. The helmet clicked into place. The visor slid down. A soft hum filled the suit as oxygen began to flow. He could hear his own breathing again, slow, rhythmic, almost like footsteps echoing in an empty hallway. He looked at himself in the mirror. What stared back was not just a man, it was a traveler about to step into a world without air. A human preparing to rise towards space in a fragile balloon. He whispered to himself, "This is it." Outside, the helium valves opened. A deep metallic hiss filled the desert. The balloon began to rise slowly, gently, like a giant creature waking from a long sleep. At first, it lifted only a few feet, then more. Its enormous transparent skin shimmered in the soft light. The jumper walked toward the capsule, slow steps, heavy boots, narrow vision through the helmet. Every sound was muffled, every breath was louder. His world had shrunk to the rhythm inside the suit. Technicians helped him climb into the capsule. He sat carefully, strapping himself into the seat. Cables were connected to his chest. Data screens came alive, displaying oxygen levels, heart rate, pressure, temperature, altitude readings. "Com check," a voice called through his helmet. "I hear you," he replied. "Vitals confirmed, suit pressure confirmed." He looked through the small window. The desert looked calm. The balloon above him now towered into the sky, glowing in the early morning sunlight, a sight beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The mission leader entered the radio channel. "We are ready for launch. This is final confirmation. Once we release, the balloon will rise for the next 2 hours. There will be no rescue possible after 30 minutes. You understand?" "Yes," the jumper said softly. "Are you ready?" There was a long pause. "Yes," he answered. The final countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The clamps holding the capsule to the ground released with a strong metallic click. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the capsule lifted smoothly, silently, like a feather caught in a slow wind. The ascent had begun. Jumper felt a strange sensation of weightlessness, not like flying, but like drifting. The ground fell away beneath him. Cars, people, tents, they shrank quickly. The balloon above expanded slowly, becoming enormous as it rose into thinner air. Inside the capsule, he felt calm, but outside, the world transformed. The desert became a patchwork of golden patterns. Hills appeared like bumps on the Earth's skin. Shadows stretched long and thin. As he climbed higher, the wind faded. The air pressure dropped. The world grew distant, quieter, more peaceful. Mission Control continued speaking. "You are at 2000 meters, 5000 meters, 8000 meters." Clouds floated beneath him like white islands. He could see small towns, roads, mountains, everything looked tiny, almost unreal. At 12,000 meters, jet airplanes usually fly, but the balloon kept going, higher and higher. Sky outside began to change color, slowly turning from bright blue to deep, dark blue, a color most humans would never witness. At 20,000 meters, communication crackled for a moment, then stabilized again. "Altitude 20 kilometers. Everything is stable," Mission Control reported. The jumper gazed through the window. The curve of the Earth was beginning to appear, subtle at first, then clearer. He felt his chest tighten, not from fear, but from awe. The world he knew was becoming a beautiful blue planet below. Inside the capsule, temperature dropped sharply. Frost formed near the windows. The suit heating system worked harder. The jumper remained calm. Altitude 25 kilometers. Balloon expansion nominal. The balloon had grown massive, like a shimmering silver ghost stretching across the sky. If anything went wrong, even the smallest tear, the entire mission would collapse. But the balloon continued to rise. The sky outside grew darker. Stars appeared faintly, even though the sun was still shining. Up here, space and daylight mixed in a strange and beautiful blend. At 30 kilometers, the horizon looked curved, clearly curved, like he was seeing Earth through the eyes of an astronaut. His breathing slowed as he felt the immensity of the moment. He said quietly, "It's beautiful." Mission Control answered, "We see your data. Everything looks good. Keep calm." The capsule shook slightly as it crossed turbulent layers of the stratosphere. It wasn't violent, but enough to remind him he was no longer in a safe world. After almost 2 hours, Mission Control spoke again. "Prepare for leveling. You are approaching maximum altitude." The jumper's heart beat faster. Altitude 38 kilometers, 38, 538, 8. At 39 kilometers, the balloon stopped rising. Silence. Pure, endless silence. He looked around and saw space. Not the deep black void of outer space, but a darkness so perfect it did not look real. Beneath him, the Earth glowed in shades of blue and gold, clouds swirling like white paint on a giant canvas. He felt small. He felt human. And yet he felt something bigger, like he was standing at the edge of the universe itself. Mission Control's voice came through slowly, almost whispering. "You have reached the highest altitude. You are standing at the edge of space." Then came the words he had trained years to hear: "Open the capsule door." His stomach tightened, he unlocked the seal, a hiss of pressure escaped, the door pushed outward, light flooded in. The platform was there, tiny, cold, terrifying. He stepped out, one foot, then the other. He held the rail, the earth curved below him, space stretched above. Mission Control spoke: "Perform your final check. Then, when ready, begin the jump." He took a deep breath. His hands shook slightly. He leaned forward. The world waited, and then a sudden warning alarm blared inside his helmet. A red light flashed. A voice shouted through the radio, "Stop, do not jump. Something is wrong." The jumper froze, standing on the edge of space with only one step between him and the longest fall in human history. The warning alarm echoed inside the jumper's helmet like a scream trapped in metal. The red light flashed over and over, reflecting in his visor. For a second his heart stopped. His legs locked. His hands tightened around the rail. He stood on the tiny platform 39 kilometers above Earth, frozen between life and death. One step forward meant falling into the longest freefall in human history. One step backward meant retreating into the capsule, ending the mission. The whole world below waited. The team on the ground held their breath, and the sky around him remained completely silent. "Mission Control, repeat." The jumper said, voice trembling. "What's wrong?" Static answered first. Then a broken voice came through. "Oxygen pressure, we are seeing abnormal data, stay where you are." He looked at the suit's wrist panel. Everything showed normal. Heart rate normal, pressure normal, temperature normal. But something was off in Mission Control's readings. His life was now a puzzle, one piece missing, one mistake away from disaster. The mission leader's voice came through. "Louder now, stay calm, don't move, we're checking the data." He stood still, breathing slow, staring at the beautiful world beneath him. Through the helmet the earth looked peaceful. Huge clouds floated like white islands. Mountain ranges curved across continents. The blue atmosphere faded gently into dark space. It was so beautiful and so deadly. Inside Mission Control, chaos erupted. Screens flashed. Engineers argued. Oxygen technicians shouted numbers. A pressure specialist raised his hands. "It's not the suit," he said. "It's the capsule's altitude sensor. It's reading wrong. We're getting corrupted data." The mission leader asked sharply, "Is the jumper safe?" "Yes, completely safe." "Then clear him." The radio crackled again. "Jumper, this is Mission Control. You are safe. The warning was a false alarm. Repeat, false alarm." The jumper didn't move. His voice was quiet. "Confirm again." "Confirmed. You are go for the jump." A long breath escaped his lips. The fear inside him loosened. His body relaxed, but the moment had changed him. The false alarm reminded him where he really was, standing in a place no human should ever stand, preparing for a fall no human should ever attempt. He looked down again. The planet waited. Mission Control spoke softly, almost respectfully. "You may begin when ready." He placed both hands on the rail. The platform under his boots shook slightly from the thin wind. The silence was deeper than anything he had ever heard. His heart sounded like thunder in his helmet. He closed his eyes for a moment. Memories flashed quickly: training sessions, engineers double-checking his suit, the balloon rising, the desert far below, the long climb to the edge of space. He whispered to himself, "This is for science, for the future, for everyone." Then he stepped forward. His boots reached the edge. There was nothing beyond, only empty space and earth. Mission Control spoke one last time. "Whenever you're ready, take the jump." He didn't hesitate. He leaned forward and jumped. For the first second he felt nothing. No air, no sound, no movement, only endless emptiness around him. The universe felt weightless, as if time itself had stopped. Then the fall began. His body dropped faster and faster, pulled by Earth's gravity. The balloon and capsule grew smaller immediately. The curve of the planet grew larger. The air around him remained thin, almost invisible. He couldn't feel wind yet, just a slow, gentle pressure building on his suit. Inside his helmet he said softly, "I'm falling." Mission Control responded, "We see you. Everything looks good." As he kept falling, his speed increased. From the ground he looked like a tiny dot moving through space, a human dropping from the sky like a meteor returning to Earth. He rotated slightly, corrected his posture, and stabilized himself. His training was working perfectly. Speed increasing, Mission Control reported. Altitude dropping rapidly. At 35 kilometers he began to feel the wind. At 33 kilometers the wind became louder. At 30 kilometers it became a roar. His body shook, not violently but enough to remind him of danger. Then came the moment everyone feared. He began to spin. At first it was slow, then faster. Faster? Inside the capsule-sized suit his body turned like a wheel in the sky. The horizon flipped. Space, Earth, space, Earth, space, Earth. "Mission Control, I'm spinning," he shouted. "We see it. Stay calm. Use body control. Arms out." He opened his arms wide, forcing air to catch him. The thin atmosphere resisted, the spin slowed more, then stopped. He breathed hard. "You're stabilized," Mission Control said. He continued falling, faster, faster, faster. The atmosphere thickened below. The suit shook violently. His altitude dropped like a stone. Then a historic moment arrived. He broke the sound barrier. A human body moving faster than sound falling through the sky. A shockwave formed around him. A silent boom rippled through the thin air. His voice trembled. "I think I just broke Mach 1. "Confirmed," Mission Control shouted. "You're supersonic." He kept falling, now slowing slightly as the thick air resisted him. His parachute would deploy soon, but he was still in danger. He was still falling faster than any human ever had. At 10 kilometers, he reached the troposphere, Earth's normal atmosphere. He could hear the wind screaming outside his helmet. He could feel the heat of air friction warming the suit. At 6 kilometers, he prepared for parachute deployment. Everything was going perfectly. Then something unbelievable happened. The suit shook violently. A loud crack echoed through his helmet. Warning lights exploded across his visor. Alarms screamed. And then silence, total silence. His communication system had gone dead. He couldn't hear Mission Control, they couldn't hear him. He was alone again, falling from the sky with a failing system. He looked down. The ground was rushing toward him. He reached for the parachute pull handle. He grabbed it and froze. His gloved hand touched something that made his blood run cold. The main parachute cable was twisted. Badly twisted. If the parachute failed, he would continue falling uncontrolled. He tried to fix it. The wind fought against him. The suit's thick gloves made it difficult. The world beneath him came closer, desert terrain, mountains, shadows moving fast. He had only seconds. He pulled again, the cable resisted. He pulled harder, still nothing. His heart pounded. His vision blurred. Sweat dripped inside the helmet. He whispered, come on. Finally, using all his strength, he yanked the cable. Nothing deployed. The parachute did not open. He checked altitude rapidly falling. He checked oxygen dropping. He checked suit pressure flickering. He looked up at the sky, dark, silent, uncaring. He looked down at the earth, bright, sharp, deadly. The backup parachute waited on his chest, but it was only to be used in the last emergency. He had seconds to choose, one chance, one decision, one pull. He reached for the backup handle, wind tearing at his arms, ground rushing toward him. Alarms screaming, heart racing. He pulled, and then everything went black.